In this edition of iEscape, a bizarre plan involves the creative use of dental floss.
The officers are like any other human being. They'll have reservations about placing their hands in someone's private parts.
And a chartered helicopter trip becomes a deadly hijack.
By the time they recognized what was happening, it was on the ground.
Around the world, over 9 million prisoners are behind bars. These are the stories of the few who dared to break out. South Central Regional Jail, Charleston, West Virginia, 1994. A brand new, multi-million-dollar, state-of-the-art detention center. Behind these walls, a sophisticated monitoring system watches over more than 300 hardened criminals.
This would basically be described as a medium security facility. The building's actually designed to be the perimeter, and if you can breach the building, then you do have a fair chance at escaping.
In its first year of operation, South Central's record was perfect. No escapes. But one man is going to change all that. Robert Dale Shepard is a career criminal, convicted for a string of armed robberies, sentenced to life.
A fairly intelligent person. He was manipulative, somewhat arrogant.
He had been charged with several different crimes. He had been convicted of several different crimes. He was a drug addict, and mostly pain pills, but he did everything else probably at one time or another.
Shepard had spent most of his adult life behind bars. He knows the system inside out.
Inmates, whether it's in a jail or a prison, have nothing but time on their hands, while our correctional staff have duties to perform.
Now, with his life sentence, he has nothing to lose. He creates an ingenious plan that defies belief. He discovered that the wall surrounding the recreation yard was also the outer wall of the jail.
The rec yard's about 20 feet high. It's a cinder block wall, if you will. It's like a room in the building, and it doesn't have a roof on it. But that is chain link fence, and there was no concertina or razor wire around that rec yard at that time to top of that fence. So he recognized that as a weakness.
The first part of his plan is to approach another inmate. The pair made an extraordinary deal.
He actually arranged to assault an inmate and stab him so that he would be put into disciplinary confinement.
And without a second thought, Shepard stabs his fellow prisoner. It's just a flesh wound, but it's enough to get Shepard thrown exactly where he wants to be, in solitary confinement.
He discovered you don't interact with the other population. So if you're going to have, for example, outdoor recreation, you would be at outdoor recreation by yourself after hours and not with other inmates.
As planned, Shepard now has the entire rec yard to himself for 1 whole hour every night. And he finds a blind spot in the jail security system.
The cameras at that time in the rec yard were not pan and tilt. They didn't have zoom. Consequently, they covered about 65% of the rec yard.
Shepard's next challenge is to figure a way to scale the 20-foot wall so he can attack the mesh. His first thought is an obvious one, a rope. His second was a stroke of genius, dental floss.
This requires you have dental care for inmates, and that he was provided dental floss.
Shepard calculates that 7 packets of floss should make a long enough rope.
Take dental floss and do it yourselves, 300 feet in there. You got 20 feet high fence. Braid her up 10 times. You're going to knot it. You're going to make yourself a nice rope.
Shepard bribes another prisoner so he can get his hands on a hacksaw blade to cut through the chain-link roof. But to use it, he needs to get back into isolation. He damages his cell by chipping away at the wall. And as planned, he's thrown into solitary for trying to escape. In the privacy of his new cell, he braids and weaves the floss into a rope strong enough to carry his weight.
He took advantage of things that often happen to officers, as officer complacency about pad searches, in order to move that rope from the cell to the rec yard.
Shepard hides the rope by wrapping it around his genitals, the one place guards rarely pat down.
The officers are like any other human being. They'll have reservations about placing their hands in someone's private parts, and that's where he was moving the rope back and forth from.
How Shepard moved the hacksaw blade has never been revealed. Finally, after months of planning, Shepard, armed with his dental floss rope and hacksaw blade, has the rec yard to himself.
Well, he's in the rec yard in an area of the rec yard that you can't be seen via the camera. He knows the correctional officer's got other duties to perform. He used a AA battery out of a Walkman as kind of a grappling hook of sorts.
Using the battery as a weight, Shepard throws the line at the mesh above. After 3 agonizing days, Shepard finally makes the perfect throw. Slowly, he begins to scale the 20-foot wall, pulling himself up the thin dental floss rope. Hanging from a thread, the pain grows as the dental floss cuts deep into his fingers. It's already taken him 20 minutes to get to the roof. And he still has to cut through the steel mesh above. Finally, Shepard is through the mesh and pulls himself up onto the roof. After crossing the roof and jumping to the ground, he has only one more obstacle to breach, the barbed wire perimeter fence. Now, outside the prison, Shepard takes off for the forest. The jail is quiet. Robert Dale Shepard is free. South Central Regional Jail, Charleston, West Virginia. Serving a life sentence, Robert Dale Shepard's daring breakout is making international headlines.
33-year-old Robert Shepard escaped from the South Central Regional Jail just after midnight. Authorities say his method of escape, a homemade rope made out of dental floss.
Big news, of course, is a local guy. And I told my wife, I said, I'd really like to catch this guy, you know. He's making a mockery of law enforcement, it felt like.
How was Shepard able to escape without being noticed? Why was he not more closely supervised? Which gives rise to the third question, just how safe are the regional jails?
The FBI, local sheriffs, and state police immediately launch a massive manhunt.
He had robbed a lot of pharmacies. He was a drug addict. And he admitted that, you know, he was addicted to drugs, so to feed his habit, he had to steal.
Needing a fix, Shepard approaches a pharmacy in the small town of Mineral Wells.
When I first looked up and he asked me if I was the pharmacist, I didn't want to believe it was him, so I thought, you know, this is just somebody that wants me to look at a sore or a rash or something and make a recommendation. And he was holding a pillowcase, and he handed me the pillowcase. And when he handed me the pillowcase, he was holding a gun underneath of it. And he said, "I'd like for you to put all of your narcs in this pillowcase."
Natalie Weigel begins to fill the pillowcase with painkillers and other narcotics.
So, of course, at that time, I knew exactly who it was. And all I could think of was gun, gun, gun. Oh, my gosh, that's a gun.
Fighting to keep calm, Natalie obeys Shepard's every order.
I knew that he was capable of becoming very nasty very quickly. So my main objective was to just give him what he wanted and get him out.
As soon as Shepard is out the door, Weigel dials 911. By chance, Police Chief B.D. Atkins is only minutes away.
We get a call that, 10 or 15 minutes behind us, there was an armed robbery. We just passed this Fruth Pharmacy in Mineral Wells, West Virginia. Well, we all turned around and started back that way. And when they gave the description of the red and white Ford truck, we thought, hey, that's our man.
As police chase down Shepard's truck, he turns off the main road onto a dirt path into the forest.
And it's a gravel road now, and it wasn't that good then. It was mostly dirt. And he went out that road, and the first bad curve, he went over a real steep embankment.
Stunned by the impact, Shepard bolts from the truck and disappears into the trees. Believing he's still armed, Sheriff Merritt and Chief Atkins began a cautious search.
And as we backed up, I saw him over the embankment behind the barbed wire fence.
The officers moved quickly to corner Shepard.
You're real hyped when it happens, and you're focusing on one thing.
There he is. We ran down the embankment and hollered. And I told Jay, I said, if he moves, blow his brains out.
And of course, me and all my wisdom, I said, yeah, and I'll blow your head off too. And
Hey, Bobby, keep your hands in sight. Don't move them.
Surrounded by armed police, Shepard surrenders.
He was kind of a beaten individual right then. He was worn out. You know, he had run through the woods. It was a real hot day. He was sweating. He was just out of gas. He said, you don't know who you got. You don't know who you got. And I raised up his hat because I knew he was partially bald. I wanted to make sure. I said, I know who you are, Bobby. And he seemed kind of shocked that we'd caught him.
Shepard went straight back to serving his life sentence. Additionally, he was charged with escape and armed robbery.
One of the first things that he said when he returned to jail is that he would escape again, and he would do so within a short period of time.
The brand new jail underwent a full security overhaul.
We actually instituted a program on him where he was continuously moved from cell to cell or searched periodically so that he couldn't fulfill his promise to escape again.
Razor wire and tilt and pan security cameras were immediately installed. And not surprisingly, inmates were banned from the use of dental floss. Coming up, a clever criminal pulls off a one-of-a-kind escape. Her Majesty's Prison, Gartree, Leicestershire, 1987. A top security correctional facility for 320 of the most vicious criminals in the UK.
Gartree took top security prisoners, terrorists, including the IRA, terrorism abroad, and serious life sentence prisoners.
With so many violent inmates, Gartree is an escapee's hell. Each cell is a cage within a cage. The high walls are impossible to climb. 24-hour electronic surveillance covers every inch of concrete and steel within the walls.
There have been attempts of escapes over the period up until 1987. None of those have been successful.
The 38-year-old violent career criminal John Kendall is determined to be the first. A lone wolf, convicted of armed robbery, sentenced to 21 years, Kendall is feared and hated for his ruthless brutality.
He had this history of extreme violence, armed robberies, shot a man 3 times, I think in his leg, just trying to escape from a robbery. This is the sort of man you would not want to meet anywhere.
This cunning thug believes he's found a hole in the prison's security. And with help from his friend, ex-con Andrew Russell, he's planning to exploit it.
Kendall was obviously talking to Russell to make plans of how they were going to escape, when they were going to escape, what time, and all the details that they needed to have in their heads.
On December 10th, Shepard scans the skies in anticipation.
The planning involved must have been in great detail because they knew exactly what time to expect the helicopter.
At nearby Stansted Airport, Russell has chartered a helicopter.
He told me that he worked for a security company and that he'd hired the helicopter because he had a job the following week in Leicester.
By 3:30 p.m., the helicopter approaches Gartree Prison.
I had no idea that there was a high-security prison anywhere near the route that I was taking.
It was a grey December day, fairly misty and murky. Probably meant there were slightly less prisoners on the sports field on exercise.
With the prison in sight, Andrew Russell turns the routine charter into an unexpected nightmare.
I noticed I was fiddling with the headset jack plugs. I turned around to ask him what he thought he was doing, and I found his gun pointing at me. The first thing he said to me was, "Do what you're told, and you won't get hurt." So I said to him that I was fine with that. I'd do exactly what he told me, because by now the gun was nestling snugly behind my ear. the second thing he said to me was, take me to the prison. I want you to land on the playing field.
Helicopters were not unknown in the area, but this one came in very low. But by the time they recognised, as I understand it, what was happening, it was on the ground. It landed immediately in the centre of the sports field. It was that quick.
As I landed, when I was maybe 20, 30 feet from the ground, I could see in front of me and to one side of me, two of the prisoners detached themselves from the crowd and started running toward where I was going to land, and did land within seconds.
As Kendall tries to climb into the chopper, another prisoner, murderer Sidney Draper, makes a split-second decision to join in the escape.
They couldn't get in the left-hand rear passenger door, and they decided to try the other door, and rather than come around the front of the helicopter, which is a perfectly safe and sensible thing to do, they ducked under the tail boom. Of course, I couldn't see them at this stage. If anyone moves around the back of a helicopter, any helicopter pilot is paranoid about someone dying by walking into the tail raters.
The dog handlers couldn't release dogs because they would know which prisoners they were trying to detract from getting into the flying machine. I don't think the dogs had seen a helicopter before.
Reaching the passenger side, Kendall and Draper climb aboard.
The guy in front said, take us to the golf course.
As the helicopter takes off, the guards can only watch in frustration.
Staff in any British prison don't carry guns. All they have is a baton. A baton against a helicopter was pretty useless.
The escape takes just 30 seconds, and Ian Evans is forced to take to the sky, now carrying 3 armed and dangerous criminals. Leicestershire, England. On the soccer field of Gartree Prison, vicious armed robber John Kendall and convicted killer Sidney Draper have just been snatched from incarceration.
The helicopter was actually on the ground for less than 30 seconds, so it was a very smooth operation.
As the helicopter disappears from view, emergency procedures at the prison are activated.
Every governor and every control room in a top-security prison had a manual of procedures for different situations. One of those was called Rogue Elephant, which dealt with potential helicopter escapes.
Rogue Elephant is the call sign to launch a Royal Air Force jet from a base in nearby Cambridgeshire.
The RAF was supposed to have an aircraft take off and try to intercept what was happening, but there was a delay in the call reaching the right people.
As the Rogue Elephant intercept plane fails to launch, the pilot of the hijacked helicopter, Ian Evans, has his own problems.
I thought they'd shoot me. I thought the guy with the gun would shoot me.
He starts climbing, hoping to be spotted.
I wanted someone to be able to see me on radar, at least, because I figured that the prison authorities would have alerted the nearest airfield by now.
But the escapees are on to him.
They stopped me climbing at around about 300 or 400 feet. The guy with the gun told me to stop messing about, or I'll shoot you in the leg.
Ian Evans knows that he will have to take his life in his own hands if he is to survive.
And the only way I can do that is to deliberately crash the helicopter. And that was my plan. Pretty useless plan, but at least I felt that if I crashed the helicopter, I'd be giving myself an equal chance. I might die, but so would they.
Kendall, Russell, and Draper know they are running out of time.
The guy in front said, take us to the golf course. I didn't want to go to the golf course because the golf course was about 3 minutes away and I needed more than 3 minutes to work out my cunning plan to escape from this situation.
But the hijackers run out of patience and force a landing near a road.
At that very moment, he put away his gun and pulled out a pair of handcuffs. And I was just so relieved. He's not going to shoot me.
Handcuffed and helpless, Evans is grateful to be alive.
The escape took place at Gartree Prison, northwest of London.
In Central News tonight, the main story. A massive police hunt is underway as 2 prisoners are airlifted to freedom.
There was a whole relay of hijacking cars and to make their getaway, and they just stopped people at gunpoint in their car, pulled them out of the car, and stole the car, and away they went. they made their getaway by doing so many of those that the police weren't able to keep up with them. And the breakthrough came when a detective constable from Brighton had information that Kendall was with his wife in a flat in the King's Road in Chelsea.
On January 31st at 4 a.m., armed police stormed the Chelsea apartment.
And they had guns trained up on the flat and shields, and they were shouting, I think they said, "Come out, we're armed police."
John Kendall, his wife Lorraine, and his accomplice Andrew Russell are all arrested. For another year, Sidney Draper eludes the police until the underworld gives him up.
They're toe rags, they're informers, they're rats, they grass each other up.
John Kendall was given an extra 7 years for armed robbery. Sidney Draper had 4 years added to his life sentence. Andrew Russell got 10 years.
I don't think there's anything my staff or myself could have done to prevent an escape of that nature.
Following the Gartree escape, the British government ditched the Rogue Elephant plan and protected every high-security prison against helicopter landings.
Today, the exercise yard at Gartree is covered by high-tension wire, making sure such an escape can never happen again.